I did not really track the Unite the Right rally. I didn't know it was coming up, but I didn't even know it was going to be today. And even if it was, I probably would, would not have really taken an interest in it. But obviously now it's become more of a national issue because of the incident that happened as far as a driver that drove into a couple or a group of counter protesters and ended up murdering one of them, charged with second-degree murder. His name is James Alex Fields from Maumee, Ohio. I'm going to look up. I know Maumee is in rural Ohio, but used as a takeaway for this ridiculous incident where, you know, first of all, this is a rally that I think this is in Lucas County, Ohio. This is in, Maumee is in the Toledo area. I do want to say that the alt-right is a group that is poorly defined, and to conflate them with traditional white supremacy is an oversimplification. There are a lot of them that would fit into that group, and a lot of them that kind of break the template. They don't really fit in necessarily. There are a bunch of alt-right people that aren't even white, and it's been hard for me to make sense of that because I'm not as much of a racial politics person as other people are in terms of having a real view on it. I think that the white nationalist upsurge is a natural result of a lot of these issues that have been happening where multiculturalism is being pushed coercively on people that otherwise are disadvantaged themselves. The white poor do not need multiculturalism in order to make their lives better, in order to create a more harmonious society. That what they really need is addressing of their other needs that are economic. Why is it? I want to ask this question for anybody that is listening as of right now. Why is it that when there is Islamic terrorism, a lot of apologists for it will claim that it's a result of oppression or the lack of economic opportunity, which there is a case for that. If you go to regions of Pakistan where there's massive Islamic extremism, a lot of them are the poorest regions of Pakistan. So why is it that they don't use the same belief on the right-wing ultra-nationalists or white nationalists? Why don't they look at it the same way? Because the reason is that they would have to acknowledge that there is such thing as white poverty. And that's one of the reasons I have given at least a little airtime to a couple of white nationalists that I did interview. And I don't go at them with the standpoint where I look at them as an adversary, which I very well could, because they wouldn't, a lot of them I'm sure wouldn't want to speak to a Jewish commentator, practicing Jewish commentator. There's really no reason for them. All they would have to do is say, well, you're just going to distort my words. Well, in my opinion, it's better for me to deal with people that think that they have an issue with society that's ignoring them and give them a proper forum to express their views, as opposed to just like some newspapers will do, speaking to them on the phone and then distorting their views on whatever publication that they're putting them on. I think that goes to the problem of what integrity in journalism means today. Integrity in journalism does not mean editorializing and casting a racial angle on every single issue that's going on. I'm going to take a look at the chat soon, but there's really a problem now where, hey Dean, I know it would be you. So Dean asked that question, which I'm going to come back to, but I see there's a huge problem with white nationalists believing, oh, we're going to hold a rally now, and people are suddenly, they're going to see the real, that we're stronger than ever under Donald Trump. Well, no, you're not stronger than ever. The truth of the matter is that the disparity in as far as who can attract the most attention is absolutely as uneven and asymmetric as ever. The white nationalist groups have to realize that they are not going to get anywhere in this society because the majority of Americans, simply put, do not agree with what they believe. And the reason is, and I alluded to it when I called into Anthony Logan's show, you have a one-dimensional message, and your one-dimensional message does not resonate with a lot of people that think that other things are more important. I get the same reaction sometimes when I say this to people that are marijuana advocates, Israel advocates, advocates for against Islam. People feel very passionate about a single issue. You know, I know people that are also black nationalists. The Black Lives Matter movement is a good example of a movement that has focused so laser-like on one issue that they're ignoring the fact that they're alienating tons and tons of people by just focusing on that single problem. And then when they try to broaden their vision and try to is a good term for it because they don't succeed. People realize that they're really kind of wacky. And you know, I think that these white nationalists are also being deceived by the addition of a lot of people to their membership. There are a lot of people that are joining up. So in terms of actual membership, these people are they're adding members. There's more people that are coming in, but that does not mean that they're becoming more popular amongst broader society, because the people that are not joining, there's such a large group of in the audience that are saying, you know what, this is not my scene. It's the same reason that hippies, for a long time, they were just popular because of, or I wouldn't say popular, but they were getting in style, so to speak, because they brought a totally different viewpoint on society. So it appeared for a while that hippie counterculture was the new vogue. But the majority of Americans did not become hippies. That's why in 1972, when people thought, oh, Richard Nixon is this awful president who he's just this ogre, nobody liked him. Well, the fact of the matter is that the silent majority voted to re-elect Richard Nixon over George McGovern, who was very popular among this so-called vogue hippie culture. Well, what comes to the natural conclusion is that, yes, the hippies are very visible, and they have a good presence in the media, or at least in the music and the style of the times, but the majority of Americans and the majority of the audience did not become hippies, and they didn't embrace that lifestyle. And eventually it kind of passed on. I mean, there was something that replaced it. You know, I think by 1973, hippie culture had really much, pretty much run its course. You started seeing other things developing, even a counterculture. Punk rock, by the way, the next trend that came after it, and that would include, in my opinion, similar artists that are not punk rock, like Alice Cooper. They cropped up as a counterculture to the counterculture. They were against hippies. They were like, well, this peace and love is a bunch of bullshit. We're just going to... Black Sabbath was a counter to the hippie culture. They said, well, this flowers and patchouli shit doesn't really speak to what we're experiencing. We're going to do all dark shit, and we're going to start, you know, playing our guitars really low and everything. And that was the reaction that pushed those out. Now, what happened with those movements? Well, a lot of people did start listening to that type of music. But again, that was not, first of all, it's not pop music because it's not catchy and universal. So therefore, the hippie movement, for a while, like I said, they looked like they were the new Vogue, and they weren't. I mean, they were the Vogue, but they were not. This was not a sign of what society was going to look like. It was a passing phase. And the metal movement, yes, it was very in vogue for a while. It was a passing phase, and the same thing with grunge, and the same thing with gangster rap, and unfortunately, it's the same thing with the alt-right. They have to realize that yes, there is a significant portion of Americans right now that are that have embraced some of the beliefs of whatever these people are that joined the Charlottesville rally, but they don't really. The vast majority of Americans will not go to the mats for it. They won't really fight for those ideals. And you can look at it positively or negatively. I mean, if you're an alt-righter, you might think, oh, that sucks. I mean, you might call bullshit on what I'm saying, but you will think, oh, that's awful. That means that people don't really have ideals. But what it really means is that your message, it resonates for right now, but things can change. And I think that the alt-right this could be a bad moment for them, not just because of the optics of the incident, which is the most obvious reason. Yeah, Dean, those two related questions I'm going to get to in a couple minutes. But sorry to keep you waiting. But I wasn't really intending this to be a question and answer, but you know, a lot of these streams, it's good because they can keep me focused. The reason I'm saying it could be a peak moment is very simple. That if you take that example of the hippies and the counterculture, their moment that showed that they peaked and they were going to kind of jump the shark was the Altamont concert, which I believe was in 1971 with the Rolling Stones, that turned into a violent riot when some of the concert goers fought with Hell's Angels. And I'll look it up. Altamont kind of, here it is, Altamont Free Concert. 1969. It says, the Altamont Speedway Free Festival was a counterculture era rock concert held on Saturday, December 6, 1969 at the Altamont Speedway in Northern California. The event is best known for considerable violence, including the beating death of Meredith Hunter and 3 accidental deaths, 2 caused by a hit-and-run car accident and 1 by drowning in an irrigation canal. Scores were injured, numerous cars were stolen and then abandoned, and there was extensive property damage. So this included, there were a bunch of really iconic acts there. Santana, Jefferson Airplane, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and the Rolling Stones. The Grateful Dead actually declined to appear there. So that gives you an idea of how wild it was. Even the Grateful Dead wouldn't appear there. And Meredith Hunter, I believe, was the one that was murdered. Her approach to the station was violently driven off by members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, who had been contracted to serve as security guards. He subsequently returned to the stage area, drew a revolver, and was stabbed and beaten to death by Hell's Angel Alan Passero. And they've made a documentary about it, Give Me Shelter. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that the issue is that once people finally decide, look, this is a bunch of bullshit. These people, they first of all, the person who committed this act of violence today at Charlottesville was clearly an idiot. And he decided to do this plow and kill method, which most people would agree is pretty cowardly, attacking people with a motor vehicle. And it breaks the pattern of past incidents where there was violence between the left and right, including in California when there were, or and I think Portland, where you know you had some of these, you would have these squads of people just jumping in and fighting each other, the Antifa versus the alt Knights and whatever. And this is where I'm getting to the reason that the alt-right is, you know, kind of a, I'd say the alt-right is full of a lot of people that they're armchair revolutionaries. And then there's a committed minority of them that are willing to go out and actually be a part of this political violence. You have the issue is that there's a lot of white people that are disaffected by the political system, and some of them became, well, I don't know if it's some, I mean, there's a large number of them that were very energized by the Trump run in 2016. But Donald Trump is not a white supremacist, and the people that supported him that are going to have to live with the fact that they don't have a leader in America. It doesn't matter. I mean, the left can make statements all the time about how Donald Trump is a white supremacist, but the fact of the matter is that the interests of these groups are not being served by him. If you were really an opponent of Donald Trump, you should realize that the people that have attacked him for being a white supremacist have so missed the mark that it almost does a disservice to their own views of the political spectrum. But first of all, Donald Trump is somebody who's lived his entire life in a cosmopolitan system in New York City, where being a white nationalist doesn't get you ahead. And certainly, his involvement in the boxing industry and gambling industry in Jersey and all of that. Nobody who's in those industries develops, real white nationalist beliefs. You can see that in the fact that he has 2 children that are married to Jews, and a lot of his closest business associates are black or Jewish or in some cases, Asian. It doesn't make any sense. The people that think, oh, he's ghosting for us. Yeah, he's really ghosting for you. That's really what's happening. I mean, his son-in-law is Jared Kushner, another Jewish mega millionaire or whatever. So I'd probably suggest to them, you have to really reassess who you're putting your trust in. This David Duke, who is a ridiculous fool compared to previous decades when he seemed to be like an intellectual, kind of the vanguard of the extreme right. If he really is supporting Donald Trump, then it's a sign that he's lost his touch and his savvy in terms of what's smart politics, because he's setting his own movement up to be betrayed. You cannot be a white nationalist and succeed at the national level today. It's just a fact of the matter. And those are the I'm saying this as somebody who's outside the movement, but who's spoken to people that are in the movement. I would say to them, your movement does not have a real figure at the national level. You have people that you support at the national level, but they're not really serving your interests anyway. I mean, you're basically renting yourself out to somebody else. And they did that last year with the David Duke incident with Donald Trump, where he alleged, he did not outright condemn David Duke. Well, that was a very strange period. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I think his excuses for the incident were very lacking. But he did condemn David Duke, and David Duke is not going. The man is an albatross, and he's never had any success anywhere. But the underlying reasons why there are people that subscribe to David Duke's ideas have to be addressed, and that's where I'm going to get to Dean Kruger's questions is, do these white supremacists or white nationalists hate Jews? And he also says, are they the same thing, or are these two totally different groups with two totally different ideas? Well, that's a hard question to answer. First of all, their relationship with the Jews, I think the majority of them do hate them, but there's a sizable minority that say, well, we don't really care about the Jews so much. We're just in favor. We're not anti-Jew. We're just pro-white. That's what they would say. And then there's those that are saying, yes, we're absolutely against them. The Rothschilds. There's actually a long tradition of white nationalist alliances. You know, and I'm not saying all white nationalists, but there's groups that have allied themselves with you know, the Islamic extremists, and it's happened before. It's not like this is strange territory. And they will use some of the same anti-Jewish narratives that have been used in the past. You know, and even using the protocols of the Elders of Zion and Henry Ford's an International Jew, and they have their own figures like Eustace Mullins and Ernst Zundel, and they use them, and they're claiming that really the entire educational system, the entire media, everything has been allied since forever, and it's all an orchestration by an international Jewish conspiracy, and that's one facet of the alt-right. That's what they claim, and I would say that those people, they are really fighting an uphill battle when it comes to getting people to agree to that. Now you're trying to say white supremacists versus white nationalists, are they two different groups? I think they overlap. I think a white nationalist would claim, well, we don't believe that we are better than any other race. We just think that we should have the right to have our own self-determination as our own racial group. And then the white supremacists would say, no, we do believe that white racial, the white race is more biologically, or whatever they want to say, biologically, intellectually, that they just want to claim that's what a supremacist is. Their whole thing is, we believe in one thing being supreme to another, superior, and everything else not being as good. Well, I have two responses to those, and I've discussed them with the white nationalists that I've talked to, which are that there is, in my opinion, no such thing as one cohesive white race. There are people that are Polish that are, I mean, they just have pretty different characteristics from people that are Welsh, and I think that one solution to this, and I alluded to it in my conversation with Dan Kazmer, who's a nice guy. He's got like an enjoyable channel. Sometimes it does scare me a bit, but he does a good job. And the other guy that I've talked to, the Reverend Citizen Shane, is a little more emotional and provocative, in my opinion. But these guys, they have to kind of recognize that not every white community lacks an identity. There are ethnic communities, such as the Irish and the Croatian community in my area, that they have a very strong identity based on traditions. And the problem that I see that has caused this upsurge in quote-unquote white nationalism / white supremacy is that throughout the history of the United States, this tradition has at some point been abandoned by a lot of these white communities. And one of the reasons is because of leftism and multiculturalism. It's told those people, no, you can't be proud of whatever heritage it is that you have. If you have German heritage even, and I mean, there's exceptions. There's plenty of people that will go to an Oktoberfest and German communities in like Texas and you know, the Midwest. Sure, those are exceptions, but broadly speaking, and especially the closer you get to urban areas like the New York City area and everything, that gets discouraged, and you become more ensconced in this ridiculous multiculturalism. By the way, it used to be that the political left in America was okay with this. This was until the advent of postmodernist progressivism, which is really the problem that has brought this to the fore, because in many of these urban communities, the traditional politicians, you know, take the Kennedy family, for example, they played up a lot of these white ethnic identities in order to say, yes, we will represent the Catholics, the Irish, and whatever, by extension, the Italians and the Portuguese, and they were saying, we are going to represent you, the real Americans, whoever you are, and that would include a lot of these white ethnic groups. You know, Greek Americans, they had Michael Dukakis, who was a Democratic politician, and I think was a proud Greek American. And there's nothing wrong with that, but eventually the Democratic Party arrived at a bus stop where they said, you know what, we're going to embrace fully this anti-white multiculturalism, which does invalidate the identities of a whole section of humanity. And they played this ridiculous game. I actually wrote about it a lot. I called it the toxic cocktail, which means that they were going through this balancing act, mixing establishment democratic politics with extreme left radical, you know, black nationalism in the form of Black Lives Matter and some of the other groups. Antifa wasn't really a factor at the time. This was in you know, summer 2016 through the fall. They were dancing with Black Lives Matter, trying to, you know, say to them, yes, you're welcome to support us, but we don't really want to be too closely associated with you because you're an embarrassment. Well, is that not a parallel to what has happened with the alt-right and Donald Trump? First of all, Donald Trump he's never been nearly as associated with the, you know, in terms of actively courting them with the alt-right as has the Democratic Party with the far left. The Democratic Party has embraced far left figures for decades. That's why you have this Linda Sarsour being active in this Women's March and other democratic causes, and she will just come on stage and basically represent herself as the resistance. Well, as the resistance, this is a person who supported Hillary Clinton, who the radical left has now been, you know, they've renounced her. She supported her at the end. She supported Bernie Sanders too, but she supported Hillary. She was not one of those dead enders, one of those never Trump, never Hillary people in the Democratic Party. She was not a Bernie bro. And the Democratic Party has been dragging its heels very, very adamantly at renouncing any people that it sees as that are clearly crossing the line between, you know, being activists, whatever causes they are, and being inflammatory extremists. And that's not just Linda Sarsour. You know, they had that the other person, what was her name? She'd been in prison. Her name escapes me at the moment. I think her name was, I'll have to look her up. But there was Razmia Ode, for example. She'd been convicted of terrorism. Give me in a second. Donna Hilton. They embraced at the Women's March, which was put on at the behest of the Democratic Party. They had this woman, Donna Hilton, who served jail time for murdering a man after torturing him for days. So, and then they'll also they won't renounce this this cop killer, Assata Shakur. Now, you know me, I'm not a supporter of the Blue Lives Matter movement or anything, but I will say that if you're involved at the top level, you shouldn't be embracing any of these extremist groups. It doesn't matter whether they're Black Lives Matter or the alt-right. You have to embrace groups that are consistent with your ideas, not with ideas that will gain you more attention. And I'm not going to try to make this super long, but we do need to start thinking of the time after this. What's going to happen after Charlottesville, because I do think that this could be an incident that leads to the unraveling of the alt-right movement. The people, the general American public does not want chaos on the streets and a civil war or anything. They want stability, and Donald Trump he's not going to stake his reputation on a bunch of idiots that are waving flags, and a lot of these are white. I think the National Socialist Movement was there, and Duke himself was there. Why would he want to, lock arms with these people when what do they give him in return? Nothing. What do they contribute? Did he win an election thanks to the support of this segment of the population? They're not that big. They don't provide. What's the upside of it? That's what people have to realize, that you can't expect support when you don't bring anything to the table. The white nationalist movement does not bring anything to the table, and I'm sorry. Some of these people are very they're very good at putting their ideas out there, but their ideas are often shallow in terms of other topics. They don't have a lot of them have opinions on healthcare, for example, that are completely to the contrary of the rest of the right. Richard Spencer is for universal healthcare, for example, and they go and they have just a very underdeveloped platform on everything else. I mean, what in education? Do they have an education position for all Americans? No, they have an education position for some white Americans. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, that if you don't have a platform that can offer something to a lot of people, a significant portion of the population, then you're doomed to failure. And that's what they are. They are doomed to failure. And that's what happened today in Charlottesville. Based on what I know there, I know that the 2 troopers that died were not related to this incident. It was more of a helicopter crash, I believe. But you do have to wonder what the hell these people are thinking. Do they really think that by going to protest in favor of a statue that they're going to create a larger movement? Well, at some point, I think that they peak. And that's what happened this weekend, they got too big for their britches, and I could be wrong, but I want to figure it out. What's the real goal here? Because if the real goal is shit like this, then I don't think that they're really going to make an impact in the long term. They're basically going to fizzle out. People will get interested in other things, and America has more important things going on. The important things are bringing jobs back to the country, dealing with what to do about the North Korea crisis, and making this country a better place. Not with getting into these racial wars, because even if you think that there should be a racial war, a lot of people don't. A lot of people think that they want just the country to be prosperous and have a good and be united. And you can't be united if you're making things happen all along racial fault lines, which is basically what I believe. That's why the majority of my topics, I try to focus away from racialism if I can. It doesn't always, I talk to people and sometimes they make it an issue, but I can only speak for myself, and that's my position. That's the same position I have. That's why I renounced the ADL. I don't think that they speak for me, and I also don't think that this alt-right speaks for people that believe in what I believe. I think that they're completely off base, and at times I don't think that they know what the hell they're doing. So that's it. Have a great Sunday, which I think we're in already, and maybe there'll be a couple live streams tomorrow with some people that I know. I'm going to try to put together a second part to my For Real News video. And I do want to get back to the Hillary Clinton shit that I've been doing, the Bill and Hillary Clinton Presidential Penitentiary Library, because I'm way behind. There's a number of books that I've already read that I didn't make reviews for. So we'll see you later. And it's Ramon Bold Like a Leopard. And thanks for tuning in.